So my name is Holley Truitt. I'm a self-proclaimed behavior nerd and also a vet tech, a behavior counselor, and a trainer at Star of Texas Veterinary Hospital here in Austin. And I'm really excited to nerd out with y'all today. I'm going to be talking with y'all about how we can make vet visits better. So let me just get to my presentation really quick. Okay. All right, so while I'm doing this, I cannot see y'all. So Miranda's gonna be letting me know if like my audio cuts out or if there's anything else that I need to be aware of. I also wanna let y'all know some of these slides are gonna get kind of dense. I do go over a good amount of stuff. Like she said, there's a recording for you afterwards. Also, I'm going to put a ton of resources. I think I've got a link to like over 30 resources for y'all at the end of this. So a lot of the stuff that we talk about, you can dig in deeper a little bit later, even besides just going back and rewatching this. All right, so we are going to talk about first, why are vet visits stressful? To know how to make them better, we're going to need to know why they're stressful. So one of the main reasons is just unfamiliar environment. Oftentimes our pets may not be used to getting into the cars, to traveling. We only go to the vet maybe once a year. So that is not a very familiar place. And then there's a lot of different noises, phones ringing, people talking, machines going on, a lot of hustle and bustle, and a lot of unique smells too. So there may be dogs who are sick, vomiting, having diarrhea, others who are fearful and letting out pheromones. So even just the smells, even things we may not can smell, can be really intimidating at the vet's office. We use a lot of strange tools. You can see the person in the photo has a stethoscope on. This poor dog, by the way, is so fearful in this photo. I used it on purpose for that though. But so, stethoscopes, otoscopes in the ears, blood drawing, all of these strange tools are stuff that they're also not used to seeing. And so when you only bring it out once a year and in a strange environment, it adds up. And then we do a lot of painful stuff as well. So oftentimes eliciting pain is the only way that we can know that something is wrong. Like, let's say maybe your dog is limping. Well, is it the hip? Is it the knee? Is it the ankle? We have to mash around and figure out what it is. So sometimes we're causing painful experiences, or maybe your pet was already painful and now they're just associating it with coming to the vet. And then unfamiliar handling. So we oftentimes handle them in ways that you may not handle them at home too. We use restraint techniques. We sometimes have to get to odd parts of their bodies or hold them in certain ways to get to stuff like blood draws. So these are all things that you may not just normally be doing at home. And so then it seems very strange whenever they're in a new environment once again, and it's being done. And then lastly, you take all of those things and you add them up together. So you go into a car that maybe you don't like. You go to an unfamiliar place. There's a lot of weird smells. We use strange tools. It's painful. There's unfamiliar handling. And sometimes just one thing can happen, like maybe using a stethoscope, and your pet may turn around and snap. And maybe it wasn't necessarily just that stethoscope that caused the issue, but it was all of these small things that kind of added up together. So if we don't take care of some of them, they start trigger stacking is what we call it, but they start adding up. And one small thing can be enough to kind of tip them over into like a very stressful or not fun experience. And then we want to improve vet visits, both for you and for your dog. So for your pet, we're going to get more accurate diagnostics if they are calm and relaxed. Their heart rate is going to be more accurate. Their blood pressure is going to be more accurate. Blood work can be more accurate. Stuff like cortisol, you produce a lot of cortisol when you're really stressed. So all of these things can play a part in the diagnostics that we see. Also kind of going back to maybe your dog being painful. If they are terrified, they may not show us where they're painful at. They may be very stoic and just hold still and show no emotion. And so that can make it hard to figure out, what's going on. And besides the physical aspects of it, then of course there's the mental aspects of it, right? That they're having a terrible time. They are very stressed. They're fearful. They're anxious. And so we want to make that better for them. This is something that they're going to have to do their whole lives. And as they get older, more and more frequently. So we want for it to be something that doesn't cause stress constantly. And then for you, You know, less anxiety for you too. Whenever, you know, pets come in, they are not the only ones that I see in the room that are really stressed. Oftentimes you can see that look of stress on the owner's faces too, because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know how much it's going to cost. They don't know what to expect from their dog. And so, you know, it takes a toll on the parents as well. And so having a dog that's more comfortable coming into the vet can also help you to relax. And it can be a vicious cycle of you're anxious, so your dog's anxious, which makes you anxious, so your dog's anxious. So this can kind of help both of us, all of us, to kind of be more relaxed in the situation. And then it also can cost less to have a dog that is more handleable at the vet. So oftentimes for fearful dogs, we may prescribe medications. We may have to postpone visits or ask you to come back or pay multiple fees if we're unable to do services. Or sometimes we may even have to sedate your pet, which can oftentimes be like a larger sum of money. So dogs who are calmer, oftentimes the vet visits are a bit more affordable. And then kind of like I was talking about, seeing that kind of fear and stress, preserving that human animal bond, right? So we
Oh, Holly, we lost your audio for a second. Holly, can you hear me?
to preserve that bond between y'all. All right. So talked about kind of why we want to make vet visits less stressful. So now I'm going to give some tips and some tools to kind of put in our belt to help do that. This is going to be broken up into a few parts. So we'll go over tips and tools. We'll also go over just like some training as well. But first, we're going to get some tools in our tool belt. Okay, so some tactile support. So one of the first things everybody's going to think of is thunder shirts, right? So think like compression garments for us, like weighted blankets, stuff like that. So something that helps to create a sense of like comfort. Those can oftentimes be used in vet settings to help reduce stress. The people who make Thunder Shirt also make another product called the Thunder Cap. And the Thunder Cap is kind of like a semi-blindfold that goes over their eyes, and it reduces their eyesight by about 50%. So it can help with reactivity. People will also use this maybe walking their dogs or in other situations where they can become overstimulated really easily. And so that's another great product that can be used at the vet. Ear coverings, ear coverings for noise sensitive dogs. You know, I talked about the hustle and bustle of the vet clinic. There can be a lot of movement, a lot of sounds going on. So sometimes maybe just even something that muffles that sound, if that's the particular stimuli that's causing the most amount of stress, can be helpful. And then T-Touch head and body wraps. So I have seen people use T-Touch wraps in the vet, not a ton. If you don't know what T-Touch is, I recommend you look it up. It's a really cool technique. I actually took a course or like did a webinar or participated in a webinar through Every Dog Austin just a few months ago where we talked about T-Touch. And the half wrap on the side, that photo that you see, that illustration by Lily Chin, we're going to see multiple of her illustrations. So this is one of the examples of a T-Touch wrap. You only leave them on for like 10 or 15 minutes. They're not tightly placed on the body. And the goal is just to kind of ground them in the present moment, right? So to make them think about their body, kind of that self-awareness can kind of help to relax too and not live in such a flight or fight mode, so that then we can give treats and they'll accept it, or they may notice that this isn't such a bad visit. Okay, and then nutraceuticals. So nutraceuticals are just things that are over the counter. They're going to be like your supplements, more herbal things. So one of the first ones that I like to go to is actually a pheromone. So Adaptil makes a pheromone that is calming for pets, and they make it in a collar. There also is sprays that you can get, but it is synthesized. It's the same pheromone that is used for nursing mothers that kind of makes like a calming essence. We can't smell it. Pheromones are pet specific, or sorry, species specific. So you can't smell it, but they can. And so you can oftentimes maybe put it on a bandana around their neck or use like the Adaptil collar to help try and create like kind of a calming atmosphere around them as well. I'm going to go through some of these other ones. So CBD oil calming treats, I'm going to kind of put those together. So not a lot of research has been done. They're unregulated, especially like the calming treats. Companies can put whatever they want in them and sell them as a calming treat. CBD oil, there has not been a ton of research done on the effects of it in animals, how much to use, how frequently, stuff like that. So both of those categories, I say use a bit of caution with, just because we don't really know the effects, and I don't want you more to waste your money on something that's not really being that beneficial. In calming treats, you'll see the one in between the CBD oil and the calming treats is L-theanine. So that is a well-known calming supplement, and it's oftentimes put into the other calming treats. In the resources I'm going to give you, I have a link to a company that I trust that's the main ingredient in one of their calming treats. But so that's a great ingredient to look to look for when you're trying to get calming treats. And then calming probiotics. So this is another one. Multiple companies make calming probiotics. The one that most vets are going to recommend is the Purina calming probiotic. So gut health, believe it or not, is really helpful in supporting brain health as well. So if you have a super anxious dog, getting that good gut health can then help to make sure that we get good brain health also. All right, and then lastly, one of the kind of biggest tools when it comes to kind of medications that we have in our tool belt is going to be your prescribed behavioral medications. So these are ones that a vet is going to prescribe for you, and they are going to greatly alter their kind of base level of anxiety at the vet. Call them the big guns. These are the heavy hitters. These are the ones that by far are going to get us further in seeing a reduction in that anxiety. And one of the things that you want to note with that is that it can take several tries, and it can take different medications to get it right. Just like us, some of us are lightweights, some of us, aren't. And so your pet may need more or less or a different combination. So just know that you have to be patient. Sometimes you have to try multiple times in order to get the right dosage for them. And every pet reacts uniquely. So, most of these are going to be anti-anxiety, stress reduction, but every now and then some of these medications can cause the opposite, and they can become hypervigilant, hyper stressed, aware, maybe even become like aggressive when they normally wouldn't be. That's very, very rare, but can happen. So just also know, like I said, every pet is unique, same as us. So how it affects them is going to be unique as well. If you feel like your pet could benefit from behavioral medications, definitely talk with your vet about it. As a technician, that's not something that I can really, go over like dosages or what I would recommend, anything like that. But just know that there are options out there besides just over-the-counter medications to help with anxiety, both acutely, like at the vet, but then also chronically, like for chronic anxiety, like some of us get. And then medications are not fix-alls. So medications can help to, like I said, alter that base state of anxiety, but we still have to do work to make it better, right? Like we're bringing them down a notch, but we still need to actually have steps to then kind of backpedal sometimes some of the negative associations that they already have at the vet. All right, and then bringing your own treats and toys. This is a big one. So most vets will have some sort of food available. Depending on the vet, that may just be dry treats. Other vets may have, a variety. But bringing something that that your pet likes and is really high value is very helpful. So deli meats, cheese, whipped creams, easy cheese, anything that that they really like, or maybe they don't get a lot of, can kind of be like a special treat at the vet for a very high anxiety situation. And then toys for dogs who are play, toy, ball motivated. I will say that most pets are going to be too nervous to play while they're at the vet, but it's once again a great kind of indicator of where their stress levels are at. If we see a dog who's able to, play ball, play fetch, play tug while they're at the vet, we know that they're pretty calm while they're there. I've got a note here at the bottom about feeding half the normal amount of breakfast before a vet visit. I want to touch on that for just a second. So It can be helpful to feed half the amount of their regular food. That way it makes our treats more valuable while they're at the vet. But if your dog shows any kind of like basically becomes hangry, like they may become like aggressive or kind of more snippy if they're not getting their food, then I would say don't do that. Just give them the full meal. Also, if your pet is like diabetic or has some sort of underlying issue, I wouldn't withhold food from them before a vet visit unless you're told to. All right, bringing your own samples. So sample collection can be stressful. You know, obviously stuff like blood samples you cannot bring to the vet, but you can bring a poop sample. So most annual visits are going to require some sort of poop sample to check for intestinal parasites. So bringing that sample in so that your vet doesn't need to collect it can help reduce stress. Oftentimes vets, especially if they are not fear-free certified, they may use a fecal loop, which is where they actually put a tool in the rectum and like swab it around and pull like the poop out. So obviously that's uncomfortable at an already very stressful and odd place where we're being poked and prodded. So just bringing your samples in can help us to not have to do as much stressful stuff. And then if your pet is a senior or having urinary issues, you can also collect urine before the visit as well, so that we don't have to collect that. Sometimes we'll do what we call a free catch, which is where we just go outside with them, and as they pee, we collect it. Other times we do a cystocentesis, which is where they are put upside down in a trough and we use an ultrasound to find their bladder, and then we stick a needle through the abdominal wall into the bladder and pull out the urine. Once again, this is something that can be stressful. You're put upside down, there's alcohol on your abdomen, we're pushing, we're poking. So just bringing these samples in can help us to not have to do such stressful things. Okay, and then making the journey comfortable. So now we're going to kind of take a lot of those things that we just learned and put them together. So firstly, we want to address motion sickness. So if your pet is drooling while they're in the car, obviously vomiting, licking their lips, some of those can be signs of stress, but they can also be signs of nausea. We want to address that. I hate flying. And one of the reasons I hate flying is because I get motion sick whenever I'm on a plane. So just the thought of getting on that plane can make me start to feel nauseous and anxious and uncomfortable. So addressing that motion sickness can sometimes start to already reduce the anxiety of being in the car. And then we're going to use all that support we just talked about: tactile support, nutraceuticals, pharmaceuticals if we need them. If car rides are that stressful, your pet may need anti-anxiety medications just for the car alone. Nutraceuticals, putting that Adaptil on a collar or on a blanket that you've put in the car, and then tactile support. So maybe putting a Thunder shirt on them can be helpful. And then we're going to prepare the car beforehand. So we want it, warmed up or cooled down, depending on the temperature in Texas. We want the music to be at the right volume and hopefully playing something calming like lo-fi or classical music. If seats need to be put down or up, we want all of that situated first. Any other items that are going to be brought out, we want those put in first. That way, whenever your pet gets into the vehicle, it'll be nice and calm and ready for them. And they're not getting overheated or freezing or having to, climb over seats or things in the way. And then I know I personally am really bad about this, but we want to leave in enough time to not rush. So, driving through Austin traffic can cause us anxiety. It can definitely cause them anxiety, especially if we're swerving, slamming on the brakes, making sudden movements. So also try and think about, you have a baby on board and we're trying to, we're trying to make them as comfortable as possible. And then troubleshooting potential stressors. So maybe if your dog is arthritic, they may, they may stutter getting in or out of the vehicle. They may have a hard time laying down or getting comfortable. So getting ramps for them, making sure that they have bedding in the back that's comfortable, troubleshooting what could possibly be causing stressors on the way to the vet. And then practicing. So practicing loading and unloading, practicing getting in the car, buckling up the seat belt, stuff like that. Once again, if we only do this once a year, it can be stressful. It's an unusual experience. So we want to make it normal if they, are not normally going to other places as well. All right, and now we're getting to the good stuff. So now we are going to talk about training. So putting a lot of this stuff together. And my goal is to teach you components so that you can take this and apply it to multiple different situations. Less about teaching you specifically, this is what you do in this situation. So in order to advocate for your dog, to know how your dog is feeling, to make that vet visit less stressful, you're going to have to know their body language and what you're telling you and what they are telling you. That's their main way of communication. They can't look you in the face and say, I'm uncomfortable, please stop. So we have to know what they're trying to tell us. So I'm going to put up 2 illustrations. The first one is going to be by Cattle Dog Publishing, which is Sophia Yin's company, also called Low Stress Handling Academy, I believe. So this is one of their to use illustrations, and I have a link to this one for you as well. So this is just some simple body language. So panting when it's not hot, like in the building, is a sign of stress. Lip licking, furrowed brows, these are all like the subtle signs, and we want to know the subtle signs. We want to know the signs before we're growling, cowering, peeing on ourselves, stuff like that. We want to be able to listen to them when they're saying, excuse me, I'm uncomfortable. So suddenly not taking treats, yawning, or being hypervigilant, pacing, all of these are signs of stress. We're going to go over some actual examples in just a little bit. Once again, this is an illustration by Lily Chin. Her work is also available to you, so I have got links for her work as well. She shows some other great subtle signs. So she's got in the 3rd row, there's 2 that are stressed. So there's one scratching and another shake off. So those are displacement behaviors. That's when you've got the butterflies in your stomach and you don't know what to do with them. So you just kind of whew. So those can be signs of stress also. So getting used to these smaller signs is going to be really helpful to being able to help your dog in the vet situation and to know when maybe we need to step back or to reassess. Okay, so let's practice some. So this is my dog. This is Canton. Canton is a little nervous mess, but in this photo, he is not. So in this photo, I think he was looking at the window at something. You'll see his eyes look fairly relaxed, maybe intent, but relaxed. His eyebrows look relaxed. His mouth looks fairly relaxed. His ears are in a cute position, and he overall just kind of looks like he's lounging. And then this is a photo of him on a car trip. So you can see the difference now in the eye placement, how his eyes look much more kind of frozen in the second photo. His eyebrows look much more tense. His lips are pulled back. Those ears are down. So these are just some of the subtle differences that can show a relaxed and not relaxed dog. And we're going to do one more. So this is my best friend's dog, Baxter, and this was him on the day that I brought him home from the shelter. So a very stressful day. You can see his ears are pinned back, his eyes look large, he's panting with a full mouth. His whole face just kind of overall looks tense. And then this is him a year later in his backyard. I was about to throw a ball at him. So, he's looking at me with intentness, but he looks kind of floppy. His face looks nice and soft. You can tell the difference in the way his mouth is open in the second photo than in the first photo. In the first one, he's got that full pant, whereas in this one we had been playing, but still he just kind of has like a nice loose jaw, and even his tail you can see was in the middle of wagging, and his overall body language just looks much more relaxed than in the first photo. Body language, if I could spend all day, if I could spend 3 hours talking to you about body language, I would. I think if you want to know your dog, learning body language is the key, is one of the biggest things that I could preach, would be to learn body language so that you can communicate with your dog and know when they're happy, when they're sad, when they're stressed. Okay, so now we're going to go over desensitizing. This may be a term that you're familiar with, maybe not. So I'm just going to touch base on it really quick. This is a definition that I got from VCA. So it's exposing the pet to a stimulus that would normally cause an undesirable effect, but in an extremely low level so that there's no response. And then as they become less reactive, you start increasing that stimuli or like they said, desensitizing through general or gradual exposure. So an example that I like to use is I oftentimes will teach my techs how to get a dog onto a scale to be weighed. Oftentimes scales are a place where every single dog goes. So there's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of smells. There may be hair that's left behind. Maybe they peed on the scale if they were nervous, or, you know, pooped, anal glanded. So it can be a very stressful place in the hospital. Oftentimes also it backs into like a wall or something like that. So it can be an unnatural kind of motion or area for them to go into. So whenever we are getting them on the scale, I generally will first lead them by the scale, not onto the scale, and then away from it. And then as they seem comfortable with that, I may then take a treat and put it like on the scale just ever so slightly, so that maybe just their head is kind of pushing over the scale. We get treats and then we walk away. Once I feel like they're comfortable with that, we go back and do it again. And I hold the treat a little bit further onto the scale. And I see maybe if I can just get them to give me a single paw, right? Maybe they'll put one paw on the scale trying to get to that treat. And if they do, they get a ton of treats, they get praise, and we back away from the scale. Also, backing away from the scale is in and of itself a reinforcer, because they don't want to be at the scale. So whenever I say, all right, cool, let's back away, they're like, oh, sweet, cool, good. You'll let me back away because I'm uncomfortable. After we get one paw on, then, you know, I may try 2 paws, 3 paws, you know, and then obviously 4 paws. But so that's just a good example, because I can use 1, 2, 3, 4, but of how to desensitize to something. And every dog is different. So some dogs, you know, I may get that first foot on the scale, and once they get a treat for it, oh, they're game, and they get all 4 paws on the scale easily. Other times, maybe even between the first paw and the second paw, I'm having to troubleshoot, you know, why are they uncomfortable? How can I, you know, make this easier for them? Because even that seems like too much. So desensitizing is different for every dog. And listening to their body language and knowing when to back up is very important in desensitizing. If we don't know when to back up, then we're not doing it properly, and we can be doing more harm than good. And when we're desensitizing or doing any sort of training, we want to talk about threshold, or to know what the threshold is. So once again, I'm going to give y'all some definitions. Don't feel the need to write all of this stuff down. I've got resources for you. It'll be available later. Just write down whatever kind of cool stuff you want to know or think about. Okay, so thresholds. They've been conceptualized as the amount of intensity needed to transition between emotional states. So think about like a light switch, right? On and off. It's the distance, duration, intensity, any of that, that your dog can notice a trigger and be alert to it, but not become upset by it. It's when they cross over once again from one state to another. So an example of this would maybe be a dog who's reactive on a leash to another dog. So you may be, you know, walking your dog, and, you know, as the other one is approaching, and then all of a sudden your dog is not okay. Well, we've kind of hit their threshold. We've hit their bubble of where they are not comfortable anymore. And with training, with everything we do, there's always thresholds that we're trying to stay underneath. I like this plate example here. Think about a cat maybe trying to paw this plate off of this table, right? You can see in this photo that the plate is already kind of off the table a little bit, but it hasn't fallen off yet. And we could probably push it a little bit more closer to the edge and it wouldn't fall off. And we could probably push it even closer and it still wouldn't fall off. But at some point, we're going to go over this threshold where we have now pushed too far and we're falling, right? So that, the light switch, these are just ways to think of kind of threshold. Once again, another great illustration by Lily Chin about thresholds and desensitizing. I'm not going to leave this up for too long because once again, I've got it in your resources. But to stay under threshold, we are looking at intensity, distance, and duration. So let's say we're getting on the scale. Let's go back to using that example. Maybe the distance to the scale is an issue, or maybe it's the duration. Maybe I get one paw on and then we back away really quickly and we work on that duration. We work to having all 4 paws on, and then all 4 paws on and being able to sit and stay and lay. So duration, distance, and intensity are all very important things when you're trying to desensitize and you're trying to stay under threshold as well. Whenever you increase one, you oftentimes have to decrease the other for a little bit because you're upping that stressor. So we decrease the others to give them a chance to kind of acclimate, and then we go again and we may increase another one or increase another one. All right, and then positive reinforcement. So this is how we train. We always are going to reinforce what we want to happen instead of focusing on what we don't want to happen. So you have to use a reward to increase the possibility that the behavior happens again. And you also have to, it has to be motivating for that pet, right? So that's why I talked about bringing treats that your dog likes. I may have 3 sets of treats at the vet, but if your dog is picky or, nervous, I may not have the right things for them. So having something that we know is motivating for them is going to be very important in training. And then you want it to be something that you can give quickly and in large volume. So we want to be able to give it repetitively. So big chews or even, just treats that are really large are not going to be great for training unless you can break them up or make them smaller. And then we want to practice giving those reinforcements. It may seem very, simple, but oftentimes when you're trying to give those reinforcements, especially in a stressful place or in, rapid succession, you can get your fingers all, tied together, trying to get them in the pocket or wherever you have them can also, you can start fumbling with it. So knowing where am I going to keep my treat pouch? How easy is it to reach into it? What is it like to give those treats repetitively can all be helpful. And maybe this looks like practicing it with your dog at home. You can also just try when your dog isn't around, trying to put treats quickly into a bucket or something like that, just to practice the motions and to be more familiar with it. So when it is game time, you're more comfortable. All right, my favorite part, we are going to train now. I'm very excited. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is muzzle training. So I think that all dogs should be muzzle trained, even if your dog is happy-go-lucky at the vet and everywhere else. You never know when they may become acutely painful, be hit by a car, or have something else terrible happen, something else that elicits pain and may need that muzzle on. And so we want for it to be a not stressful situation, or at least to not add to the stress of whatever situation they're in. Once again, this slide is going to get pretty dense because I'm going to go over kind of top to bottom a run through of kind of an example of how to muzzle train. Once again, every dog is different. So where you start and how quickly you can go in between steps is going to depend on the dog, which is why I've got resources for y'all. So don't feel like you need to write each of these steps down. We just want to kind of understand the concept. So a few reminders. A dog's boundaries still apply when their muzzle is on. Just because they have a muzzle on does not mean that you can now do whatever you want. And as an owner, I know that you probably know that. What I am saying is I want for the vets to know that, right? So whenever they muzzle your dog, if it's needed, they need to know that that is not just do whatever you want and hold them down now, right? It's a safety precaution. It is not an excuse to cross boundaries like that. And then also, if your dog has previously shown aggression with muzzle training, then I would recommend seeking a trainer and getting some help before you go on that journey. We don't want to make it worse, and we definitely don't want anyone to get bit. And dogs are sometimes likely to have this negative association with muzzles, especially if they have been muzzled in the past and we didn't listen to their boundaries, or they had painful stuff happen, stuff like that. So if you feel like your dog may be highly reactive to the muzzle, then seek help for it. Okay, so let's go over an example of how to desensitize to the muzzle. First, I guess I should say, I'm also going to provide links to the type of muzzles that I like. The dog in this photo is wearing a basket muzzle. Basket muzzles are my preferred muzzle, unless you have like a smushy face dog, because they can pant in them. They can take treats in them. We can shove like a whipped cream canister in there. They can drink, all of those things. And also they have like a nose to them, an ending. Whereas the nylon muzzles that clamp around the snout also don't typically have an like an end to them, so they can still get you through them if they want to. So these are the preferred muzzles by most low stress vets and trainers. So we've got our muzzle. It's a nice basket muzzle. We've fit it correctly. And so now we're going to train with it. So we are going to have some treats nearby, we're going to have some treats on us and the muzzle nearby. So once again, depending on your dog, this may have to start with the muzzle 10 feet from you. Other dogs who maybe haven't had negative experiences with the muzzle may be inquisitive, and they may want to just come right up to the muzzle and smell it and, you know, ask what it is. So we just want to start wherever they're comfortable, and we want to slowly start closing that distance between where the muzzle can be and where the treat can be until they can be side by side and our pet isn't showing any fear, or if anything is getting excited when they see the muzzle come out, because they know that that means that they're going to get a treat. So then instead of just giving the muzzle and the treat side by side, now we're going to actually start practicing giving treats on the muzzle. So we're going to start on the outside first. So just while you're holding it, you can put that whipped cream, peanut butter, cheese, whatever on it, and just hold it and let them lick on the outside of it like, you know, it's a little food dispenser. And once they're comfortable with that, then we will start working towards putting treats on the inside of the muzzle. First, you'll start out just kind of on the rim so that they barely have to stick their nose in, if at all, to get the treats. And then we'll slowly start to push those treats further back, or to give them further back, so that they start getting used to that muzzle being, their snout being further into the muzzle. We always, once again, want to make this positive. If at some point your dog seems stressed, then we need to back up. We also want to make sure that we are removing the muzzle from them before they are getting stressed. So feed that treat in a muzzle, take the muzzle away, put it back, feed your treat in the muzzle, and then take it away. So we don't want to kind of be pushing and seeing how long can we keep them in this muzzle just yet. We want to stop before they even want to stop. This will keep it positive. Once you feel like you can put the treats all the way in the muzzle, I've also seen people call it like the muzzle bowl, where maybe you even cup your hands and put like kibble in your hands and then put the muzzle in your hand, so that your hand is basically a bowl and they have to push their face way into the muzzle to chomp on those treats in your hand. You can do something like that. But once they're really comfortable having their face like really far in that muzzle and they're fine with it being moved around and getting the treats in, we're going to start working with the straps and moving those straps back and forth, moving the muzzle around and getting them used to it not just being slipped onto the face, but to kind of be like messed with and pushed, pulling those straps kind of. And once again, we're going to break it down into small steps. So we're not even just going to go ahead and strap it. We may kind of pull the straps and then let it go, pull the muzzle away, you know, bring the muzzle back as you're giving a treat, mess with those straps. Maybe you kind of start to touch it to the side of the head, like you're pulling the straps tight, but without actually clipping it. So just kind of gradually working up to being able to clamp it. And once again, depending on your pet and their previous experience and comfort levels, this may go really quickly, or this may take a good amount of time, meaning months to work on. So be patient, listen to their boundaries as you go. And if you ever are feeling like they're getting stressed, back up, seek help, look at your resources, figure out, you know, what steps we can maybe take in between to make them more comfortable. And then, so this is all built up to being able to snap the muzzle shut, but we are not going to just keep it on. We're going to snap it shut for just a second, and then we're going to remove it once again before they even want to take it off. And then we're going to slowly build that amount of time up until they can keep it on for 10 or 15 minutes, maybe while on a walk or while being able to do, you know, cues, sit, stay, down, all of those sorts of things. You never want to just leave it on them unattended for 10 or 15 minutes. If they have it on, we should be engaging them, giving them some sort of, you know, reinforcement, stimulus, something like that to make it positive. But yeah, so that is a general guide, kind of quick steps to muzzle training. There's a lot more intricacies in it than that, but I didn't want to overload this slide. So once again, I've got the resources for you to really dive into it. And now we're going to talk about fun visits. So fun visits are one of my favorite things. This is one of the things that I also do at my vet. Personally, I love to do fun visits with fear-free certified places. They're called happy visits instead. That's like a fear-free term. But fun visits are going to be these short trust building sessions where everything is kept positive. So I like to talk about, putting positive experiences into their trust bucket. So whenever we do painful stuff, scary stuff, right? We're withdrawing from that bucket. And if there's nothing in that bucket to begin with, then of course we're going to go into the negative. Of course, we're going to make a dog who's fearful and stressed every time they step foot into the hospital. So doing these fun short sessions can help to deposit stuff into this trust bucket so that when we do eventually have to withdraw by doing something painful or stressful, at least we've got a lot of good memories to kind of help outweigh that bad memory. Once again, this is all about desensitizing, not going over threshold, keeping everything positive. So we're going to start wherever they are comfortable, depending on their previous experience at the vet. Sometimes that's at the car in the parking lot. And that's our first step, is literally pull into the parking lot, put it in park, give treats, and drive away. Other times that may be, coming fully into the building and into a room and onto the scale, that may all be positive, but we want to start wherever they're comfortable and gradually work up. So we're going to desensitize. We're going to use positive reinforcements and our knowledge of body language to slowly build these visits. So the whole time you should be paying attention to your dog and what stress signs they may be giving you. And just like when we're doing the muzzle training, we always want to, I may be ahead of myself too. We always want to back up before they want to, right? So if, maybe the phones start ringing in the vet hospital, or maybe people start coming through, you can tell that maybe like the situation's about to get a little more stressful. Maybe we go ahead and exit the building now, right? So we always want to kind of be ahead of them so that we are not reacting to a negative response. We're preventing a negative response. We want to reward them for being curious. So if they want to go in the vet and sniff around and look into a room, or, go up to somebody and smell, we want to praise them for all of that, for being courageous and for wanting to know what's in there, and not being stressed. And then, like I said, I kind of got ahead of myself, but so be one step ahead of them and back up before they do. So know when it's time, to step away, to back your criteria down, to pause, to take a breath. Oftentimes what that will look like for me as a dog comes through is, especially like in like the lobby area where it can get stressful, I may, if they're comfortable, bring them into the lobby, give treats, let them smell around, and then have them exit the lobby, go back out into the parking lot. We do some, sit, stay, touch type stuff, and then come back into the building, right? So instead of making it a 15-minute visit inside, maybe we break it down into 3 5-minute sessions or something like that, with some breaks in between, so that it's not so intense for so long. So kind of taking those breaks and ebbing and flowing the sessions to stuff that's a little bit more stressful and then not stressful at all can be helpful and can get us further quicker also. And then we want to schedule your visit. Even if you're not asking anything of the staff, you're not asking them to do anything, you still want to let them know that you are coming. So they can tell you, this is not a good time. We, are super overbooked and there's people everywhere and it's crazy. Or they can tell you, yeah, can you come at this time? This is when we don't have people here. So it's helpful for us as vet staff to be able to plan and to know kind of what's going on, even if you don't need us for anything during those visits. Depending on the vet, like I personally, help facilitate these happier, fun visits. Depending on the vet, they may or may not have someone on staff who is even capable of helping you with these visits. So you may have to be the one who kind of spearheads this, and once again, knows your dog and knows, when to back up, when to go forward, stuff like that. And just remember that at these visits, they're short. Like I said, they're 10 minutes long, and everything is positive. So we are not trying to push them. We're not adding a toenail trim on. We're not adding a vaccine while they're here. Even if they don't like getting on the scale, we're not getting on the scale. We're doing everything fun, and chill. And as they gradually get more comfortable, if all of a sudden now Fluffy is kind of sniffing around and gets up on the scale, great, we give treats for that, right? Or if we feel like we can maybe push a little bit further, great, we give treats for that. But the main goal of these is always to just be adding into that trust bucket, right? So I never want for them to become stressful. And then I'm just going to touch really quickly on husbandry training. This once again kind of goes with like your muzzle training, this happy visit training. So husbandry is just any kind of general maintenance that's required to keep your pet. So like the cute little dog that we've got in this photo, you know, toothbrushing, nail trims, ear cleaning, baths, eye cleaning, all of this stuff. And, you know, it's care to keep your pet, but oftentimes it's asked of us as vet staff to do, right? Like, can you trim his nails? He has an ear infection. It needs to be cleaned. You know, maybe we've got discharge around the eyes because we've got like an eye infection going on or something like that. So doing this husbandry training at home can help. So that way, when they do get to the vet, they are used to at least having their nails or their toes handled. Even if you don't want to clip their nails at home, right? They're at least used to having it handled so that once again, we're not, you know, messing with unfamiliar parts of their body in an already, you know, unusual place with unusual smells and unusual handling and all of this. So even if you don't plan to do all of your own kind of husbandry care for your pet at home, like grooming and stuff, it is still very important that we go through the steps of training them and desensitizing them to this, because it will need to be done. Maybe not by you, but still it'll need to be done. And we don't want for that to be a stressful experience. If y'all want me to, like, y'all can tell me later in chat, if you want to pick like maybe one of these where I can do like another example of desensitizing or something, I can. But now that y'all know how to desensitize and kind of how to give your reinforcements and how to look for body language, my hope is that you can take some of these and some of the other resources and stuff that you get and can start to kind of know on your own how to apply these to a lot of things that you're going to do with your dog. So once again, I didn't want to go through every single one of them because the steps are going to be pretty redundant. Start small, get larger, back up if you need to, stuff like that. But if y'all want me to go over like one of them or something, we certainly can. And then yes, it is essential to your pet's health. So oftentimes we'll see dogs with really, like, I'll use nail trims, for example, really long nails because they don't like nail trims and it is a hassle and maybe they weigh 95 pounds and, you know, it's expensive or, you know, whatever, hard to do. But the downside of that is now you have a dog with really long nails and those nails are impacting the floor, right? So think of a pet or think of like yourself maybe in too small of shoes and your toes are constantly hitting the edge of that shoe, how it can become uncomfortable and your toes can maybe become like sore or painful, right? You don't want to walk by the end of the day. So the same thing can happen with those overgrown nails as they're constantly impacting the floor. They can cause pain. They also can cause your pet to literally have to change the gait of how they walk because pressure is being put differently on those toes. So these aren't things that we can just, you know, kind of let go and hope that, you know, it's not that bad. They do affect their overall health. So we want it to be done, but we need to make sure that we're making it positive whenever it does happen. All right. And then communicating with the vet. This is one I'm just going to kind of talk through. I don't really have stuff for y'all to write down, but another thing that I would love for y'all to do if I could coach you through your vet visits are going to be to communicate with staff, to tell them your boundaries of what you expect. Like, you know, if Fluffy is showing signs of stress, I would like you to stop, or I would like for you to give treats during this. You know, stuff that lets them know that they have permission to stop. Oftentimes, especially in like, you know, low cost places or high density places, they are going through a lot of pets very quickly. Also, just kind of in general right now, the entire vet world is overwhelmed with pets. We are understaffed, we're underpaid, we don't have enough people. And so the caseloads per doctor, per tech are very high. And so letting them know what you expect can also be helpful. That technician may just be trying to get through their day and just getting done, right? And they may be expected to do that toenail trim because they're told, you know, that's $15 that we could be making or, you know, whatever. So setting those boundaries with them and letting them know what you expect can also take pressure off of them too, can also let them know like, oh, thank God I don't have to hold this dog down. You know, I can say, yeah, they were really stressed, we stopped. You know, that can give them the freedom to do that. And then also can help you so that you know that your dog's boundaries are not being crossed. And speaking of that, keep your pet with you if you can. So sometimes vets will have a habit of maybe doing like the exam in the room in front of you. And then they say like, okay, we're going to take Fluffy to the back now to do, toenail trims, whatever. And they don't mean anything bad by it. They're not trying to hide anything from you, right? Oftentimes that's where the equipment is. That's where there are more people to help, stuff like that. But the downside is that is also where there are the most amount of people. That is probably also where they are housing other pets. There are other smells, there's other commotion, there's lab work being ran, right? Some machines going on. So keeping them in that room with you, unless they are protective of you, right? That's a whole other story. But keeping them there with you can also keep them the most comfortable, right? They don't want to be separated from you. They probably want you there as some sort of support for them. So try and keep them with you if you can. And avoid drop-offs also if you can. Drop-offs are something I know is very convenient. You can just drop them by, go run your errands, pick them back up later. But once again, they are oftentimes housed in places where there's a lot of commotion, a lot of smells, noises, maybe dogs waking up from anesthesia who may be dysphoric or like screaming or, things like that. So the vet is an overall stressful place, right? Going to the hospital is stressful. We don't like to go get our blood drawn. We don't like to go see the doctor. So we know how that feels. And now imagine if we were to do that to you, but to maybe put you in a place where you don't understand the language. Maybe we go drop you in another country, right? And now you're going to the doctor, but you don't know what they're saying and you don't know why they're touching you the way that they are and stuff like that. So they don't know what's going on. So keeping them with you, trying to, keep it as positive as possible, keep the staff, feeding treats, stuff like that, is really, really helpful. So I give you permission, please, to tell them what you expect, what you don't want to see. You can say, hey, if he starts growling, I'd like for you to stop. If he, pees or poops on himself, if he seems very stressed, maybe even give them signs, because body language now. So tell them, if you see X, Y, Z, I would like for you to stop. I'd like for you to reassess, something like that. I'd like for us to talk about another game plan. Something like that to help staff know that they have permission also to stop, or that you don't want them to push past boundaries. Because depending on where you go, that expectation can be very different. As a fear-free clinic, we are very into listening to their boundaries, to re-game planning, but not every vet is like that. And sometimes just out of sheer volume, not because they don't want to be, but out of sheer volume and fatigue, that they can't. So yeah, I think that is it. That is my whole presentation. So I am going to back out of it now, and so I can see my own face. And yeah, I will open it up to whatever questions or whatever y'all got throughout.
All right. Awesome. That was so much information.
I have got so many resources. I've got all the resources. Don't panic.
Yeah. We'll make sure that everything gets posted. So if y'all have other questions, you can always get that. And Holley, will you tell everybody the best way to get in contact with you if they have questions they want to ask you?
Yes, I will give you, Miranda, my email address, and they can reach out to me through email. I also, while we're here, feel free to keep talking, Miranda, but I am going to put a link in chat to the resources that I have. It's just like one document with all the resources on it.
Awesome. We did get a great question about how do we ask them to do things in the exam room instead of in the back?
That is a great question. So you can say like, I feel more comfortable if my pet stays with me, or I think that my pet may be more comfortable with me. I know that this is hard during like COVID times where some vets may only be doing stuff curbside right now. And I get that. That is hard. I am very lucky the vet that I work at has a back door or a backyard space. So we're able to see pets, outside, even in the height of COVID when we couldn't. But yeah, I would say generally just saying like, I'm more comfortable if they stay here, or I think they would be more comfortable if they stay here, is just a great way to kind of phrase it. And I will also say sometimes depending on the visit, like let's say maybe there's just getting like a single vaccine or something like that, you may even can ask them to do it in your car or in the parking lot or somewhere like that, even if like the vet, going in the building itself is stressful.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's a critical thing for folks to know, is that when you come from places like the shelter world, we're used to doing all kinds of crazy things to make things work in weird situations where, you have people driving up and you're vaccinating their puppies out of their cars because you don't want them touching the ground. We're used to kind of figuring things out, but in the private practice world, oftentimes folks don't need to do that. So just be mindful that there's this balance of saying like, hey, you're the one paying for the services. You get to ask for what you need for your pet, but that vet might not be able to do it. And so it's that boundary of saying, it's not like just because this vet says it has to be done this way, it always does, but you have to figure out, what vet you're comfortable with and what vet has the facilities to be able to help you with whatever you're looking to do with your own pup.
Yeah. I'll also say during the height of COVID, whenever people couldn't come inside, we offered Zoom so that they could like watch their pets, right? That can also kind of create, I know it's not the same, like, especially for your pet as being there, but it can help create a sense of ease for you also, that you at least still have the capability to say, hey, I can see this, please stop, or, whatever. But that's a great point, Miranda. Sometimes they may just not have the ability to accommodate certain things. Absolutely.
Yep. We got a great question. My dog hates getting on the scale. At what point should I stop trying to get her on there?
Ooh, good question. So at some point that probably means we needed to have backed up, right? Maybe that means we need to spend more time walking past the scale. Maybe we throw treats around the scale, something like that. Maybe our sessions have gone too long and we're kind of tired, meaning your pet, like maybe we're tired or just kind of becoming stressed because, we've tried multiple times and it's not working. Sometimes I'll see people get frustrated and just like pick their dog up and set them on the scale. That does not help solve anything. Unfortunately, it can also make it more stressful, especially if your pet may not be used to being picked up. I'll see people pick up their 70-pound dogs to like set them on the scale. So at what point you should stop is if you are not getting any progress, if you're seeing signs of stress, if you're feeling like we're not going anywhere, we're becoming more stressful, then I would stop. Try again, maybe in 10 minutes, maybe in a day, something like that.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about the scale, my own dog does not like the scale. One of our favorite ways to do it is teaching your dog to walk onto something like a towel or a yoga mat or something else like that, where you get them used to, there's a funny thing and I'm going to guide you onto it. And you get them used to doing that on more places, and they're more likely to do it than at the vet office. And depending on the kind of scale that folks are using, sometimes you can also get away with saying, hey, I'm going to bring you this towel. Can we put it on the scale and zero it out from there and have her walk onto that? Because it's a funny feeling underneath those toes. So if you can make things feel more like something you've already trained for, you might as well. It just kind of depends on the environment you're in. But that's one of my favorite things, is to say, don't worry about this being a scale. Teaching your dog to like walk onto different objects and think that that's really fun is a great way to make sure that they're going to be happy about the scale, walking into a new room, all kinds of different stuff. So always fun. And we also got a question about, okay, the one for desensitization was ear cleaning or wrinkle cleaning.
Gotcha. Yeah. So let me do ear cleaning with that one. So once again, everything is dependent on what your pet may have been, like their previous experience, right? If it's been negative or neutral or positive. But so oftentimes we want to start at a point where they are comfortable being touched, which is going to be like shoulders, back, neck, something like that. So sometimes even just going straight for the ear itself and trying to touch the ear may elicit a response. So sometimes maybe that's just touching like the head and getting them used to like your hand being like, I don't know if y'all can see, but like around the ear and not even on the flap itself. And once again, every time we touch and we do this, we're giving treats, right? So we're making this positive. And then depending on what kind of dog you have, if the ears stand up or if they're floppy, you may start working on like pulling those ear flaps back, right? And practicing that. You can also start practicing touching around on the insides of the ears a little bit, and then maybe putting your fingers into the ears. And once again, I'm going through this kind of quickly. You want to break all of this up into small steps. Then you want to start introducing them to the bottle itself, right? So maybe if they know like a touch cue or something like that, you can have the bottle nearby, have them touch, just be familiar with the bottle itself. Maybe even with it, like the nozzle turned open, so that even maybe there's like a bit of a smell or something at some point. So they just kind of start getting used to it. And then we're going to work on starting to move that bottle towards them, right? Often, or also while giving treats. So moving it towards them until they're comfortable with that. And then usually a next step is going to be tipping it over and maybe just touching that like applicator to the ear. So not squeezing or anything like that, not putting it down in the ear, but just simply touching it to the inside of the ear, kind of at like a outer part. And then working into doing that slowly. You can also maybe instead practice with like soaking like a cotton ball or something like that instead of the actual applicator itself, or something where you can maybe control the amount of flow of liquid that's going to come out. So you could start by maybe just squeezing like a little tiny amount in the ear so that they're comfortable with that sensation, and then work up to fully being able to like, squeeze a decent amount in there and then like massage around. I know that's not like every single step. I hope that kind of gives you like a good gist though for at least how to start. And do you have anything to add on that one too, Miranda?
I was just going to say, if anybody is working on handling stuff or husbandry stuff, there's a great webinar from last year from Heather that's called Cooperative Care, that's already on our YouTube, that goes through everything from like chin rests to blood draws. So a whole bunch of stuff there. And then Dr. Linlin Cow is going to be doing a webinar for us on using some different techniques of cooperative care. So different ways of getting our dogs to kind of contribute and participate in the husbandry process. So if you have a dog that's got some significant challenges around certain behaviors, those are some great ones to check out, in addition to more of this kind of advocacy and the simpler level stuff. But if you're having questions too, and you want to do some happy visits, if you're a Star of Texas person, you can always set up an appointment to go and work with Holley. Okay, another question. My dog hates getting her nails trimmed. I've tried playing with her feet and she always tries to bring her paws away from me. Our vet even prescribed gabapentin and Traz to help at home. Even with the medication on board, she'll break out of her drunkenness as soon as I bring out the trimmers. Is there anything else I can try before just having to fully sedate her for nail trims?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes they are just going to have a negative response to that, especially if they have, had issues in the past. Like I talk about flying, right? Like my plane's never gone down, but every single time it elicits a response, right? And sometimes if that response is strong enough, they can push through those medications, right? So at that point, we have to start thinking about something different, right? We can't just keep doing the same game plan and hoping that it's going to work, and we can just keep upping those medications. So for that, I would, recommend trying like a grinder instead, or starting to use like the scratching boards or something else. We're going to have to start breaking the mold of thinking like, okay, what we're doing is not working. We can't just keep upping meds and trying. We're going to have to try something different instead. But on that note, I will also say there are also just some things where that is going to unfortunately be the case. Your dog just may be that fearful of nail trims forever, and we can do what we can to make that better with medications, with training. But that still may be something, every pet's unique and they all have boundaries or things that they really don't like. And sometimes we just have to accept that there may just be something that they just really don't like, and we're not going to get over it.
Yep. And I think there's something to be said. Holley mentioned this before, but I can't express how much that, like, take it at their pace and go slower than you think you have to. That will bite you in the butt. And I say that as a trainer who is also an impatient person. Yep. I think all of us at some point when we're doing muzzle training or nail trim training, we go, I think I can push it just a little bit. And then the dog goes, heck no. And we take it a whole bunch of steps back, right? We have just, sort of screwed ourselves, and we're thinking like, oh, how can I fix this? So if you're like, oh, well, she keeps pulling her paws away, or we keep having this, we're still going too fast. And that's one of those places where sometimes you're like, well, I have to, like, at some point we have safety risks, right? We can't just not take our dog to the vet to get its vaccines. We have to do some things. And so that's where you figure out maybe we do fully sedate her and do a nail trim, and that gives us the months that we need to be able to work on some stuff, right? Or maybe we work on a scratching board, or we know that if we go on some jogs, she'll at least keep her nails in okay shape while we're doing these other things, right? So it might be a mix of stuff, but one of the other things too is there are trainers who do nothing but that, right? There are people who specialize in helping with cooperative care. Again, this idea of getting our dogs to opt into husbandry stuff. So that doesn't have to be something that you do on your own, because most people are not professional dog trainers. You can hire someone to help you with that. I know that there are some places, even like as the Fur Flies in East Austin, they actually do table training. So, you know, if you have dogs that are fearful of getting groomed or getting nail trims, they will actually do some of that training process there. In addition to trainers that would happily, you know, work with you and set up sessions to work with you through this process. So it's not to say, you know, Holly's absolutely right. There are some dogs where it's like, we've got a phobia, we've got something weird. It's just, you know, there's only so much we can do, but there's also a lot we can do if you have the professional help, if you can take the time, if you have the ability to do the repetitions that way. So it's kind of figuring out the right mix in there. But I think coming from this world, it's also like, if you've got to get something done, do it in the least stressful way possible. If you end up having to sedate, you know, that's not a good, like, every time we do this, we want to do it. But if we have to do it in the meantime to not continue making things worse, we don't want to keep making things worse. So
absolutely.
Balance in all things. Is there anything else, Holley, specifically from like things to always ask your vet staff, things to never ask your vet staff, you know, anything in there that you want folks to know when it comes to advocating for their pups at the vet?
You actually did kind of make me think of something when you said that. If your pet does have to be taken away from you, ask how they did. And oftentimes you're going to get that, you know, kind of generic, they did good, you know, but like really push, like, okay, well, did she, you know, was she shivering? Was she taking treats? Was she lip licking, you know, and kind of probe into that a little bit more and try and maybe get some more information if they do have to be separated from you about how they, you know, they actually did.
That's
I think
awesome.
that'd be another takeaway.
Yeah, that's great. So much good information today. Thank you so much again to Holley. Holley put that link there in the chat box, but if you don't grab it, I'll make sure I get it and I can send it out with the recording tomorrow. As a reminder, again, we are a nonprofit. Donations are much appreciated. We are able to provide low cost and free services to the community thanks to donations. And we have a whole bunch of awesome free webinars coming up over the next few months. So definitely check them out, including one more about cooperative care and some cool stuff for husbandry. So we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much for coming out. And thank you so much, Holley. We're so stoked to have you.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.